الرحمن for the defense of his doctoral thesis, which is entitled Cross-Cultural Grammatical Expression and Perception of Authority Strategies in Moroccan Arabic. Members
وفي هذه المناسبة اسمحوا لي أن أتوجه بكلمة شكر لأهل الفضل والعلم الذين لولاهم ما كنا لنجتمع اليوم في هذه القاعة. الأستاذ الدكتوراه أديب بصفيحة رئيسة اللجنة العلمية المحترمة، أستاذي العزيز ومشرف الفاضل الأستاذ الدكتور يوسف بن عبد الرازق حفظه الله وجزاه عنه خير الجزاء، وأشهد الله أنكم قد أديتم الأمانة على أكمل وجه إشرافا وتقديرا وتوجيها وتواصلا واحتراما. بارك الله فيكم أستاذي وأدامكم منارة للعلم وأهله. السادة الأساتذة الكرام أعضاء هذه اللجنة العلمية المحترمة، الأستاذ الدكتور كمال عيساوي، الأستاذ الدكتور خالد حسيني، حفظكم الله جميعا وبارك فيكم وفي أهلكم أجمعين ويسر أمركم بالخير. ولقد شرفت بكم اليوم وأعدكم أن أستمع إليكم بكل إخلاص ومحبة وأستمع من توجيهاتكم التي ستزيد هذا البحث دقة وتصويبا. كما أتوجه بالشكر الجزيل إلى من يحضر معنا اليوم ومن يدعمني من عائلتي وأصدقائي وكافة الحضور الكرام، وأخص بالذكر أخي العزيز الأستاذ الدكتور مولاي اسماعيلي علوي، أستاذ التعليم العالي بكلية الآداب باللغة، الذي يعود له الفضل بالدعم والمساعدة والمساندة فيما يخص الشق المرتبط بالمصطلحات والمفاهيم اللغة العربية المذكورة في هذا البحث. كما تقدم الشكر الجزيل إلى السيد عميد كلية الآداب المحترم ونائبيه المحترمين وكافة الأطر الإدارية. عنوان أطروحتي باللغة العربية التأدب الكلامي البراغماتي عبر الثقافات، إنتاج وتصور استراتيجيات الاعتبار بالعربية المغربية. تبحث هذه الدراسة في قضية التأدب الكلامي بالعربية المغربية، والتي لم يتم البحث فيها كثيرا ضمن تخصص البحث البراغماتي عبر الثقافات. لهذا فإن الهدف العام لهذه الأطروحة هو البحث في العوامل السياقية والثقافية التي قد تؤثر في التأدب الكلامي والإدراكي من خلال استراتيجيات الاعتبار بالعربية المغربية. وتستند هذه الدراسة إلى نظرية براون وليفنسون في التأدب الكلامي لاختبار قابلية تطبيق هذه النظرية على دراسة العربية المغربية وادعاءاتها حول العالم. كما تبحث هذه الدراسة بيانات الفئة المستهدفة وهم هنا طلاب الجامعات باعتبارهم متحدثين أصليين للعربية المغربية باعتماد المنهج المختلط لجمع البيانات وتحليلها. لذلك تم استخدام استمارة إكمال الخطاب لاستنباط إنتاج استراتيجيات الاعتبار من 10 مواقف اجتماعية مختلفة بين المتفاعلين الافتراضيين. كما تم استنباط تصور أساليب الاعتبار من خلال استمارة مقياس التصنيف، حيث تكون تصورات المتحدثين للبنى المركبة للسياق هي محور الاهتمام. تليها استمارة مقياس التصنيف المفتوح التي تحقق في حكم المتلقي حول مدى ملائمة إجابات المتحدثين لشروط التأدب الكلامي. وعلى الرغم من أن هذه الدراسة تعد الأولى في سياقها المجتمعي، إلا أن نتائجها الرئيسية تدعم النتائج السابقة التي تشير إلى عالمية استراتيجيات الاعتبار. ورغم هذا فإن القوى الإنجازية المخصصة أكثر من اهتمام بالوظيفة الدراسية. وهكذا أثبتت هذه الدراسة أن مفهوم التأدب الكلامي ينطوي على متغيرات ثقافية وسياقية أكثر مما يمكن تحقيقه باعتماد النظريات العامة والإنسانية التي اعتمدت بشكل جوهري على التأدب الكلامي الظاهر اللغوي من أقوال المتحدث. Now I move to present my work in English. First of all, I would like to express my most gratitude toward my supervisor, Professor Yusuf Abdelaziz, for his continued academic guidance, encouragement, and valuable advice. The whole doctoral thesis or process wouldn't have been possible and so rewarding if not because of his unlimited support and his generosity with his time and expertise. I also feel grateful towards my dissertation examiners, Professor Adiba Bosbeha, Professor Kamal Al-Rizawi, and Professor Khalid Husseini for their willingness to serve on my committee and support my doctoral training. In this presentation, I will tackle and present dissertation background and rationale, the objective of the study, dissertation hypothesis and research question, the research methodology, then the pilot study, and dissertation need findings. And finally, I will present limitations of the study and open up my work for follow-up research. Communication plays a leading role in our everyday life. It is a fundamental and vital process that shapes not only ourselves, but our cultural identities as well. This fundamental process is considered the bridge through which culture is passed on from one generation to another. It is also the only way to establish contact between different cultures. Moreover, culture conditions us towards one particular mode of communication over another. When cultures differ, communication practices also differ. One of the cultural aspects reflected in communication is politeness. Politeness means many different things to different people. Politeness research is an increasingly multidisciplinary endeavor. Correspondingly, it is defined through the lens of particular theoretical and methodological environment. Its underlying meaning is possibly that it is a matter of paying attention to communicating and acting in a way that is attentive to the feelings and expectations of those with whom one is interacting, allowing social interactions of those people. The scientific study of politeness as a linguistic phenomenon has been inspired by this objective. The first steps in theorizing politeness were taken by the linguists Robin Latham and Geoffrey Leach and the linguistic anthropologist Brown and Davidson in the 70s and 80s, who made claims of universality of their models in analyzing politeness. However, part of the enduring problem of this area of research lies within the fact that the traditional theories of politeness tended to be one-sided and were restricted in scope, focusing mostly on production, thus placing too much emphasis on linguistic behavior at the expense of social behavior. Substantive argument for universality of politeness principles across languages and cultures need further research applying as many new languages as possible. Blanconca et al. Suggested that research on politeness and speech act needs to shift the focus from Western languages and incorporate other non-Western languages and cultures in their scope of research. Therefore, analyzing politeness in American Arabic, which has been far less investigated in cross-cultural pragmatic research, allows for extending the scope of politeness research to a non-Western culture and permits testing Brown and Davidson's claims to universality. It will also contribute to the debate on universality versus cultural specificity of politeness. The overall aim of this dissertation is to examine the contextual and cultural factors that might influence both production and perception of politeness in American Arabic polity strategies. Its main argument is that culture and context dimensions are not adequately examined by the traditional theory of politeness. This dissertation hypothesizes that the function of apology strategies are culture-specific, Therefore, through investigating the pragmatic features that govern how apologies are produced and perceived by the native speakers in European Arabic in particular contexts of interaction, this dissertation attempts to establish how or what constitutes offenses in the Moroccan Arabic and culture, how the Moroccan subjects perceive the textual factors of the offenses, and how their perceptions are reflected in output strategies. On the basis of the above mentioned considerations and discussions in the literature review chapters, the present study aims to answer the following research questions. The first question: what are the apology strategies used by the native speakers in Moroccan Arabic, and what pragmatic Latin issues do they perform? Second question: how do the native speakers of Moroccan Arabic interpret offense context, and how their pragmatic perceptions are reflected in output strategies? The third question is: what sociocultural norms and values are involved in the Moroccan Arabic apologies, and which ones are more influential? To this end, this research followed a mixed method approach to collect and analyze two kinds of data, quantitative and qualitative data, using SPSS version 26. It adopts the more structured approach of quantitative research, using a dispersed completion task to elicit the production of apology strategies, while the perception is stimulated by a scale response task in which the speaker's meanings are the focus of attention, followed by a meta-pragmatic judgment task, which takes into consideration the hearer's judgment about the appropriate conditions of politeness in respondents' listening responses. The participants in the present study are two groups: 200 native speakers of Moroccan Arabic for the discourse completion task and the scale response task, which are speaker-oriented studies, and 66 participants for the meta-pragmatic judgment task, which is hearers-oriented study. The first version of the discourse completion task consisted of 16 situations, and was pilot tested with a group of 10 native speakers of Moroccan Arabic, parallel to the actual population of the study. The researcher decided to reduce the number of situations from 4 to only 2 situations in each category. The pilot study also revealed the need for some linguistic and pragmatic modifications. Furthermore, 2 new situations, situation 9 and 10, were added to combine the variables high social distance and high social power. Interestingly, not all the combination of the variables high social distance and high social power offers a new approach that could enhance the mean study. The main objective was to test the impact of the appearance of the offended party on the choice of apology strategies in the Moroccan culture. The resulting version of the DCT, which is consisted of 10 situations, became the master version for the main study. The discourse completion task briefly described the purpose of the research study, without disclosing that the researcher is conducting a politeness research on Moroccan Arabic apologies, as this might influence the respondent's production and thus invalidate the findings and results of the study. The present study revealed some culture-specific perceptions of what constitute apology and what constitute politeness in Moroccan Arabic. Empirically, so incorporating Brown and Levinson's conceptual phase into the classification of apology strategies, this dissertation has shown that, though these strategies prove to be consistent with the coding scheme adopted in the present study, the allocation of resources assigned to these strategies in Moroccan Arabic are culture-specific. Also, a wide range of apology strategies have been identified in the Moroccan Arabic data. Interestingly, not all these new apology strategies were found in the previous studies on Arabic varieties reported in the literature. Therefore, it could be argued that these new apology strategies are culture-specific. The findings of the study also show that, despite the numerous possibilities For IV realization, the native speakers in Moroccan Arabic tended to resort to the most conventional expression of the The syntactic constituents of Moroccan Arabic IVs show how prepositions and conjunctions affect the allocutionary force of the expression of regret, اسماعيلي, in Moroccan Arabic, in that you can either acknowledge the offense, reduce its elocutionary force, involves some degree of contrast with the apologetic nature of the IV, or raise doubts about the existence of the offense. The results also exhibit that the IV, اسماعيلي in Moroccan Arabic, is highly routinized, making it difficult to judge whether it is a real or merely ritualized apology. Therefore, an apologizer may resort to apology intensification to appear more sincere, and particularly when the offense is perceived by the speaker as serious and the social status of the offended is high. The distribution of items in the different social categories of the situations provide insight on culture-specific perspectives of the sociocultural conditions. The contextual factors of social distance, related power characterizing the speaker-hearer relationship are obviously correlated with the distribution of IVs in the Moroccan Arabic. This finding suggests that when apologizing to strangers, the native speakers of Moroccan Arabic value explicit apologies far more than when apologizing to friends. The findings about the effect of social distance also exhibit that the use of IVs is lower with decreased social distance. It is likely to increase in offenses where the apologizer and the offended person are of unequal social status. The findings also show that the number of IVs tends to rise with growing social distance and fall with both lower social power combined with low social distance and growing related power combined with high social distance. The Moroccan Arabic respondents with high related power apologized less to people with low social power than vice versa. The rationale behind this finding can be traced back to culture-specific perception of power in the Moroccan context, which acknowledges the social differences in interaction. The findings also provide evidence that increasing the use of IVs in the legal offense situation 10 perceived as risky in the Moroccan context because it might be interpreted as acknowledgement of responsibility for the legal offense committed. Another major concern of this dissertation has been studying the sociopragmatic perceptions of apology strategies stimulated by the scale response task, in which the speaker's meaning are the focus of attention. The evaluation of the scale response task includes context internal factors, the perceived severity of offense, obligation to apologize, likelihood for apology acceptance, and offender's face loss. The scale response task finding demonstrate that the context internal factors embedded in the offensive situations are highly interrelated. The severity of offense is correlated with the other context internal factors, lending support to Allstein's hypothesis that severity of offense is the representative contextual factor in the sociopragmatic set of the apology. The study also found that the Moroccan Arabic raters consistently perceive obligation to apologize and likelihood for apology acceptance as higher than the severity of the offense, implying that Moroccan Arabic native speakers are more concerned about the interpersonal aspect in remedial exchanges. Although the fact that the perception of the severity seems to be the major factor that determines apologizing in Moroccan Arabic, the ratings display a sensitive tendency of Moroccan subject to the severity of offense correlated with social distance, social power, and the type of offense committed. It is noticed, for example, that the lesser degree of the social distance between the apologizer and the offended person is likely to minimize the perception of the severity of offense, regardless of the high relative power of the offended person. The metapragmatic judgment task Metapragmatic perceptions of apology strategies were stimulated by metapragmatic judgment tests, which yielded quantitative data, metapragmatic ratings, and qualitative data, metapragmatic reasons. The analysis of the metapragmatic ratings yielded findings of a set of hypothesized features that reflect the opinions of the native speakers of American Arabic about the conditions of politeness and apology statement, including religious lexicons, elaboration and explanation, forms of address, titles, kinship terms, and intensification of apologies. The metalinguistic exploration of politeness in American subjects' metapragmatic ratings has gone through 2 cycles of coding. The first cycle of coding generated 69 metalinguistic terms used by the American subject. In the second cycle of coding, semantically close codes were merged into larger conceptual categories, yielding 10 categories in total. The concept of respect and consideration, about 22%, stood out as the most solid among all categories of the semantic folded politeness among the native speakers of American Arabic, followed by morality, formulant politeness expressions, sincerity and decency and bashfulness. Other categories with less than 10% include responsibility, explanation and justification, reparation, harmony and ease, and modesty and courtesy. Sensitizing the metapragmatic ratings and the reasons. The results confirmed that the metapragmatic reasons are aligned with the findings of the metapragmatic ratings in that there was a match between the statement features and the metapragmatic categories. The findings also suggested that the native speakers of American Arabic are metapragmatic sociocultural oriented. In other words, the sociopragmatic conditions of apology politeness function at a level where the interlocutor's relationship is the focus and interpersonal harmony is highly valued. In the rest of this presentation, it's worth mentioning that one of the tenets of a good researcher is that any work is never complete, that despite the researcher's concern to extend the scope of politeness research in non-Western culture and contribute to the debate on universality versus cultural specificity of politeness, the present study has encountered some limitations that need to be acknowledged and addressed for any follow-up research. One of the limitations of the current study is its sole reliance on eliciting apology strategies from a discourse completion task, and consequently the absence of neutralistic data. Another limitation of this study pertains to the fact that some of the scenarios might be potentially problematic for subjects because of lack of experience with the social situation. There was another limitation of the current study being unable to include other social variables like gender and age, which allow the investigation of the impact of these variables in the choice of apology strategies. Therefore, this dissertation needs to be intensified and complemented by further works of its kind to deepen understanding about production and perception of politeness in American Arabic. The present study, limited as it is in greater scope and no detail, I hope a step in this direction. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Alawi, for your presentation. Thank you for respecting the time allowed. As we have given an overview of your findings, of the steps that you followed conducting your research on mathematics. So before giving the floor to Professor Yusuf Al-Marazet to talk to us about his experience, his journey with Mr. Alawi, I'd like to seize the opportunity to thank the members of the jury, especially Dr. Alawi and Prof. Hassani, for the trouble that they went through in first examining the thesis, reporting on it, and in agreeing to be here today for this event. So thank you very much for your collaboration and cooperation. So now I give the floor to Prof. About the candidates research. The floor is yours, Professor.
Thank you, dear colleague, chairperson. Today, I'm really going to be less loaded with one of my candidates. I will talk about my journey with Mr. Al-Rahman. He was a hard-working person and still is. Okay, concerning this research, we met several times and talked about issues, and he all the time was a good listener. I acknowledge it. I think that he did a great job, a good job. It's the members now just next to me who will talk about work and the limitations of work. And I thank them gratefully. They spent a lot of time reading this thesis and making a report, and then coming from Meknes, far away. Okay, right. Mr. Ismaili is a teacher first, before being a doctoral student, and he accumulated some experience. He got his master's studies on the law of the faculty of Qadi'iyat, the University of Qadi'iyat, Marrakesh, and then moved. He lives also in Meknes, which means that we've got just Meknesi people today, right? He is a teacher at the level of Meknes, but he published a book in 2015, which means a long time ago, and his book is about the use of ICT in education applications for the Moroccan context, and he published many articles. Recently, ICT use in the EFL classroom in Morocco, and he had a lot of conferences concerning shifting learning content, promoting cross-cultural education in the EFL, ICT integration in the EFL, and he has got also 2 articles and publication. He also wrote a long time ago in 2012 some articles on the newspaper, the Morocco World News. I can see when I'm talking this way, I'm just showing that our candidate is a person who is all the time producing, working hard, evolving. The journey, back again to the journey, a thesis can be made within a few years, can be taught, I would say, and the ideas may have got to what we call some changes. I can say that when we talk about the research background of this thesis, the rationale for undertaking what cross-cultural pragmatic studies of politeness, because his thesis is about cross-cultural pragmatic politeness, production and perception of apology strategies in Moroccan Arabic. I would say that the rationale concerning this studies has been to investigate why certain utterances are considered appropriate or polite in one culture, and I would say inappropriate or impolite, or even sometimes insulting in another culture. And of course, Mr. Ismaili underwent some good job because he used a methodology mixed approach using SPSS and also dealing with what we call quantitative approach, qualitative approach, in order just to get what we call a kind of output. And this output is really important for the next coming studies because this output is accurate for any person interested in having research later on concerning Moroccan Arabic and especially on the pragmatic side. I would say that Mr. Ismaili is, I will ask him again after getting his doctorate to go on working on research, to go on projecting his, I would say, readings, conferences on different new matters that really matter our society. He is talking about Moroccan Arabic. And I do acknowledge that I like this topic because I am first a linguist. And it's been a long time that we haven't got a pure linguistic thesis, which means that to talk about pragmatic aspects, linguistic aspects of a language is something that has become a little bit scarce in our society. Well, that's all. I hope that I wasn't very long talking about Mr. Ismaili, and thank you for listening. Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Mr. Jefferson.
Thank you, Prof. Just remind that you have just talked about your journey with the candidate علوي, Mr. علوي, and because you were his supervisor, and you talked about the positive aspect of his work. Now I give the floor to the examiners to talk to us about some of the imperfections, perhaps, of the thesis, though I don't want to be negative. Of course, that they are going to talk to us in an objective manner about the positive aspects, as well as drawing Mr. Alawi's attention to what might be actually done again to make of his final version an almost perfect version. So I give the floor first to the external examiner, Professor Alawi. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Adiba. Thank you, Youssef. Thank you, Khalid. Thank you, everybody. My thanks are extended to everybody. While I'm listening to Professor Youssef talking about his thesis and journey, the journey is not only to the supervisor, but also to the examiners. They go through a journey, reading it, evaluating it, trying to understand. I'm a very frank person, so I'll be talking frankly, very, very frankly. Very positive, but the frankliness is positive also. When I received the thesis, I tried to understand, reading it first, that was difficult to understand because it's cross-cultural, pragmatic politeness, knowing that I'm also from the linguistics department. And I was into the linguistics studies, but it was very challenging because it takes you back to 22 years back to go to pragmatics and sociopragmatics and phonetics and morphology. That's interesting. And it was difficult because it is stuffed with information. A lot of information is there. So you read and you travel in time to 1970s, 1980s. That is good and bad at the same time because you have to update the kind of information you put there, preferences. So that was the ambiguity, which cannot be categorized as positive or negative, comes from first the title, cross-cultural pragmatic politeness. And when you say pragmatic, you can think about pragmatism or pragmatics. You never know if it is this area or the other area. And then production and perception of apology strategies in Moroccan Arabic. When you read production and perception of apology, you think that apology is something simple. You cannot write 300 pages on apology. I apologize to you, that's it, that's done. So here you bring something really, really interesting to the debate. But knowing Mr. Youssef and you, Mr. Youssef is a very polite person. He's the right person to supervise politeness. I am the inappropriate person to supervise politeness. So I write here, a polite supervisor and a polite supervisor, inviting us impolite to come to the jury. But we're not, we're just trying to give you an outside vision of that. It's really interesting that in our time now, when I came to the university 2011, I was younger than now, and everybody looked at us as just like kids coming to the university. We have to treat them like kids. We had this generation gap between those who retired and now. And your thesis is really interesting because politeness is not just to be polite. There's a theory behind it. There's a research behind it. It's one of the bases of society. Like Albert Einstein said that imagination is more important than knowledge. I say now that politeness is more important than knowledge. If you are polite, you have a chance to be knowledgeable. But if you are knowledgeable and impolite, you have no chance to be polite. And especially that people know you get an etiquette that you're impolite, so you have no chance of really becoming one day polite. Again, I have it's the ambiguity of the title. You need to, I don't know, it doesn't give you one path so that you can follow straight. Apart from that, you're going to go into politeness. And people ask the same question, like a thesis, all of it on politeness. That's exaggerated on it. But I would say no, if you know how to sell your product. And the first thing you open when you go like this, first thing comes to you is the dedication. And the dedication like titles to my parents, my wife and children, and that's it. When I have dedications like this, it doesn't give you a good impression. It gives you the feeling that you had a chance to sell yourself better, to give a chance that you especially you're a high school teacher. You're daily, you study published books and stuff. Dedication, you have to be careful. It gives an impression either positive or negative. Because when you read the dedication and you show the mastery that you command language, that you're a professor, you're a high school teacher, that's where you're going to sell yourself. It's like yesterday's match. If Moroccans lost the match that you lost at the very beginning, you should go back to that. That's really interesting. And I said dedication is the best place to show your language competency. This is only as a way to improve the thesis. And then comes the acknowledgement, which is, yeah, you can talk about it. These are like peripheral things. But the central point is the abstract. The abstract, for example, the first thing that jumps off the page is that it is an abstract with its key concepts or key words. We need those, especially that you're trying to do a paradigm shift. You're trying to make people think that politeness is not just something that you say, I am polite. No, it's an area of study, it's pragmatics, it's utterances, and it's speech acts, it's locutionary power. We've been talking about, especially that you have wonderful concepts like, I read here, like the rules of politeness, like conversational contract. After my studies in English studies, I studied the law. And when I see contract, I feel it's a contract. A contract is something very important. It should have been mentioned in the abstract, like a conversation. It has a conversational contract, which means it's binding. It binds us both. Like when you get into the thesis, you read it page by page. You find sementicism, and semantics, and complementarism, pragmatism. Those notions, you don't see them over here. You don't see that importance. If you're talking about across cultures, across cultures, they must figure over here. That's in terms of English. It doesn't give you like it's an abstract that is really, really well thought of. And then there are moments you talk, it's a study, and then it's a paper, and then this is a thesis. A thesis based on studies. And you wouldn't say the present study investigate. We see this in theses, but we have to say to people, this is a thesis, and a thesis is comprised of of a study, but it is based on a lot of things. And among it, because you have a review of literature. A review of literature is not a study. You understand? These are like a lot. And this area, this side, the review of literature, you have studied, you've done a lot of library work on a lot of concepts like discourse completion task, DCT, a lot of things that are much more armchair approach. That's fine. My specialty is translation. So when I looked at the Arabic version, what we worry about in translation is the loss of meaning. I talked to you yesterday. You said you have a brother who is specialized in Arabic at the university. That's a wonderful thing. And I'm addressing that to you. Like in Arabic, do we say al-Arabi al-Maghribi? Can we say al-Arabi al-Maghribi?
Yes.
We don't say this. Because in sociolinguistics, Moroccan dialect is a dialect. It's not a language. And there are 7 standards of Arabic. I'd like you to understand that I'm not trying to criticize you or anything. I'm just trying to tell you what I see things. And this is an enrichment to the thesis. So Moroccan Arabic is either Lugha al-Amiyya or Lugha al-Darija. It's not a Lugha at all. It's not even if it's a political discourse, like what makes a language is political, if that is, we are aware of this. And to avoid all the ambiguity, you should have avoided that. And then تبحث هذه الدراسة في قضية. Are you discussing a cause or a case, or discussing a research problem? So it's إشكالية for me. And تأدب الكلام, that's fine. So when you read all this, it doesn't give you like it's a wonderful translation in all objectivity. Like it's either it falls between a trap of either it's foreignized, it looks like it's somewhere else, or that's not domesticated. That's one point. Again, from the first title, like the choice of Moroccan Arabic, it's not justified. Why the choice of Moroccan Arabic? It should be justified. If we're choosing Moroccan Arabic because it is the dialect that is spoken like 90% of Morocco. It has to be explained. The choice is really, really important. So why? Knowing that there is this debate of like Moroccan Arabic, it should not be given that chance. Only if you have a political attitude that you would say like Moroccan Arabic, I consider it as a language, even if in linguistics there is an issue about it, and so on and so on. But that thing should be shown. Again, there, like in kalimat or something, it's not there. And like when you read certain things like دراسة العربية المغربية وادعاءاتها حول العالمية, when you're trying to understand, there's difficulty trying to understand. A text, when you read it, it shouldn't really be that. Then look, al-pragmati. Pragmati could also lead you either to pragmatics or pragmatism, and they're not the same. They're two different schools, two different notions. And that's I think that if you want to enrich your thesis, maybe think of an abstract in French, all right? And in French, maybe the people from the Department of French can read and understand what you're trying to talk about. Going to the table of contents, we always have this discussion talking about the table of contents. Is it an English expression to say table of contents or only contents? Because table of contents is a translation of table de matière. All right, because the software gives you that. You go into that. Check into American and English culture. Do we say table of contents or only contents? One problem that you shouldn't be doing, you're a high school teacher, is capitalization. A lot of issues of capitalization are over there. And again, when we evaluate a work, we evaluate in terms of form and content, right? At the level of form, I always do what we call symmetry. I look at the chapters. For example, number 1 in the general introduction, we have 8 pages, and chapter 1, we have 64 pages, 65, it's 25, yeah, symmetry, then 78, then 36, then 7 pages. That is called asymmetry. If you balance it, it at least like 10 pages difference, but not 25, 36. Look at that level. And again, the problem of capitalization comes over there in things. I really liked, yesterday we met by chance, you sent me that summary of the thesis. I really like that your thesis falls into the area of communication. And communication is really important, knowing that we communicate very, very bad. Like what you mean is not what you want to say. And there is this Jalaluddin Rumi saying something really wonderful, saying like, بين مقصود لم يوفق وبين منطوق لم يقصد تضيع الكثير من المعنى. Your intentions are good, but what happens here sometimes really makes you lose your patience. Imagine reading 300 pages on politeness. You have to be really impolite to develop that kind of patience to keep the tempo going on. I'm interested in one thing really important, like in terms of concepts. There's a point when you talk about linguistic politeness. Okay, so you don't have linguistic politeness. Then you come and you write in the definition, you talk only about politeness. You don't talk about linguistic politeness. Then there is this ambiguity of this thing. And then only at the page 100, then you talk about culture. You spend like 100 pages, and there, at that point comes culture. It should appear before, because it's central. That's one of the cornerstones of you. It should appear, I would say, first page 1, and then you talk about culture. You mentioned also concepts like postmodernism, but it's only mentioned. You don't dig into it. You don't give any definition of it. You don't show why you put it there. Because it doesn't matter that I choose politeness or that, but as long as I back it up with certain argumentation, then it becomes really interesting. So concepts like this, linguistic politeness, postmodernism, context, and also strategy. I would like you also, when you talk about strategy, if you want to define strategy, what is a strategy? It's like an overall plan. But this is only a strategy, this is only a technique. For me, it would be just technique, or maybe approach, or maybe method, or maybe something smaller. But a strategy is very, very, very big as a person. Knowing that the word strategy comes from the war. When you talk about strategy and tactics, and this is done for a reason. You don't do, so I will ask you, you talk about apology strategy. So what's the point? To be polite, that's a simple objective. You wouldn't use a big concept for a small objective. Then you can defend, you would say, no, you're being contradictory. In this thesis, it's impossible not to be contradictory. At a certain point, you're going, and then comes the second argument. It's very, very difficult to keep one mode of argumentation. Another central point, really central, is the methodology. The methodology is, you claim to have mixed method approach. That's a claim, which is not a reality. Why? Because when you say a mixed method approach, at certain pages you write qualitative, then quantitative. If you write qualitative number 1 and then quantitative, it's not logical. Because I'll ask you a question, and then you don't have to say, I opted for mixed method approach. You should say, the nature of the topic imposes this methodology. I don't choose it. The methodology, we don't choose it. It's the nature of the topic that imposes this kind of methodology that you do. That's one point. And then when you talk about mixed methodology, it must be quantitative, then qualitative, then maybe focus groups, then maybe other things. This is the graduation you should go through. There are moments you start with qualitative, then you say quantitative. There are moments you say quantitative, then qualitative. These are only details. But the crux of the matter, the bottom line, is what? You're only doing quantitative, not doing qualitative. Why? Because you're using only questionnaires. When you use questionnaires, you do quantity. When you do quantity, you have figures. When you have figures, you have a phenomenon. When you have that phenomenon, then comes the point of qualitative. If you claim, as you do, that it is qualitative, then I don't see any interviews. Do you have any interviews of it? There must be interviews. Because what is a qualitative? And why should I move from quantitative to qualitative? Because I did quantitative method, I got numbers and figures, and those figures, they don't answer my research problem. I have a problem, I don't get answers. I'm stuck. Then I have to move to qualitative method. If you don't get the answer in qualitative method, then you move into focus groups or maybe other things of recording and stuff. That's the graduation that we do. That's how methodology should be taught in schools. Like you learn, why are you doing this? Because I hear people in BAs and MAs claiming I did mixed method, I did that. With Cresswell, he defines that very clearly. If you move into the other one, in case you're blocked, you don't have the answers. If I get the answers quantitative, that's fine. That's it. That's really one thing. And again, and qualitative, why do we do it? We do it for an in-depth analysis because we dig into one thing. You understand? Here, I checked, there are only questionnaires. I hope you could correct me in that. I would be very pleased. And again, let me ask you one question from methodology again. When is a questionnaire valid? Is this questionnaire valid? How do we make it valid so that we can extrapolate the results? A questionnaire is valid when you pilot it, number one. Second, you expose it to a panel of experts, a pool of experts. If you claim like SBSE, it's really wonderful we have codes, S equals L equals W equals. This could be to your advantage, and it will also be to your disadvantage. Like it's just an area in which you hide some of the things. And again, you have a lot of books on gender studies here. Look at this questionnaire. It has the first part, you have only sin and jins. In gender studies, this is a crime. Because if you do jins, this is sex. It's not gender. Because and if you talk to any gender expert, you would say no, or no shtiman. And you don't say dakar unta for animals or anything. You say rajul imra'a. Then that's for gender studies. If anybody really deeply immersed into gender studies would say that. And again comes another problem. If you have only two variables, if you have only age and gender, you're going to fall into two problems. You're going to bias your results because you don't have a lot of variables. If you want to do SPSS that you claim to do, you need variables to compare, for example, age and question number 2 or 3. If you want to look for the statistically significant relationship between this and this, you understand? That is something that rings a bell to you. So by choosing only 2 elements in age and gender, you locked yourself in a cemetery. You didn't allow yourself to have many relationships that you can discuss between these 2. So if the questionnaire is not valid, then the terrible news that the result is not going to be valid. So everything goes bananas, everything crumbles down. That's not to your advantage. Maybe, I don't know. I may fall into this. Everybody can fall into this. This is possible. And that's a very big problem. If you build your argumentation on that thing, that could really cause a problem. Again, when you have these rules, like be clear, be polite, these are very good, but you see them only once and then they're gone. Which means in the journey of writing this thesis, you did your best. We do congratulate you for keeping patience to write on a certain topic. And the biggest challenge in a thesis is to stay on topic. Like you don't really digress. You did that. That's really wonderful. The language, that's really wonderful. I read only a few pages. I understood that somebody, the guy who's writing over here, he understands English. He doesn't have a problem. Sometimes you have a problem, like you write a paragraph And at the end of the paragraph, there's a lot of issues of language. You don't have issues of language, that's something positive. I should keep saying something positive. But there is a problem, big problem with tense over there. Use the future, use the past, use just the simple present. Like when you use Robin or lack of claims or argues or does, sometimes you use the simple past, sometimes you use the simple future. Knowing that you're a high school teacher, that's what you do on a daily basis. You teach tenses. Tenses, you shouldn't miss them. And here this comes at a point. I don't know if I have much time to. Do I have like 2 or 3, 4 minutes more?
Yeah.
Right? And the one I like a lot, which I don't understand in Moroccan Arabic, but no connection between the two. You could have exploited that also into not just that thing, because Ismaili is not just the one word. Because if you're trying to explain to somebody, this is what I did, and he would say, yeah, you did thesis, all of this. You have to know how to link and intertwine certain things. This one's what is the point? And again, something that troubles me a lot, the choice of Moroccan Arabic. Knowing that our country should really develop the standard languages, foreign languages, not Moroccan Arabic. Moroccan Arabic is difficult to, this is maybe I'm scholastic, maybe old school, maybe whatever you can call it, but I stick to languages, not dialects. Dialects are used by an academic context only if you're a sociologist or something else. Then you talk about power and authority. There's a difference between power and authority. Authority is legitimate power. You understand? But power is different. So make sure not to slide into the concepts. The concepts, if you slide into them, then you will have an issue. Having said all of this, I do congratulate you for the efforts that you have done and invested in all of this. This is always a pleasure to be with Yusuf when we come. He is very courageous. He would choose those topics. It shows the audacity of the professor, because sometimes we can criticize, we can see lots of things, but in time we say, yeah, it takes a lot of courage to choose a topic and to stay on it. We have to give credit when credit is due, and credit should go to the supervisor and to you also. And these are only minor, I wouldn't call them mistakes or problems, slides. You just slide, and everybody can slide. Even a professional researcher can happen into that. The bibliography too, and so that's how I cover everything. Bibliography is very diversified, very well, it's rich and in all of the terms. Yet you don't see like Moroccan, apart from Professor Bousfiha and some others, it's mostly westernized, like English bibliography, and that cannot be of great help to you. Maybe you can have, you wouldn't say like there is nobody who did this before. Like I saw in your abstract, you said like you're a pioneer in the research. And this, I think when I was also trying to do my thesis, I thought of the pioneering that comes with age and experience. With time, you understand you're not the first person to talk about something, you're the last person to talk about that. That's something that is called maturity that can happen. I hope thank you so much, Yusuf. Thank you, Ismail, Alawi. Thank you to the jury and everybody. I think I'm unlucky to get this thesis at a time we were extremely busy. I wish I would have more time to dig into a lot of things, but I did cover all of it, cover to cover. I read everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Alawi, for your really very interesting, very relevant and enlightening remarks that you formulated for the candidate. I'm sure that he will take profit from them, that he will take note of this, and he will try to reconsider again some part of his thesis in the light of what you have just the remarks you have just made. So thank you very much, Mr. Ishawi, and I give now the floor to Professor Hassini to once again to give his own evaluation of the thesis, and the candidate will be taking notes so that he will be reacting.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Musliha, Chair. And thank you very much indeed also, Professor for inviting me to take part in this panel. I'd like, first of all, to start by congratulating the candidates for performing such a well-structured, I would say, and well-organized dissertation. The form and format of dissertation is well organized. And of course, we find a general introduction asymmetrical with a general conclusion. This is the chapters, the 5 chapters, all contain an introduction and a conclusion. Again, this is well organized again for each of them, which makes the work coherent, and then this is what we look for as examiners: coherence and structural unity. Okay, the text, the language is excellent and straightforward, and I've just come to know that you're a high school teacher. This is obvious. The language is good, and the transition from one idea to another is smooth. Okay, and cohesive as well. Now, all in all, I can say that the work responds to the requirements of an academic research, and a lot of effort and time have been invested in the realization of this scientific work. I, again, do congratulate you for performing such, I would qualify it as substantial work. But as you know, there is always a but, however. So, but by the way, you should take my comments as a critiquing rather than criticizing. Please, this is, and what I'm saying is somehow comments, okay, that I hope will add to the will be an added value to the work. Now, the structure, as I said, of the dissertation is coherent and flows logically from chapter to chapter. However, let's see, Rahman, just from the very beginning, the first, the cover page, I just can't know why this is a dissertation in English taking place in a, let's say, Department of English, and then the lab is discourse, creativity, social, and religions. But you write in Arabic, and then we have Marcus Derasa, Doctorate, الآداب. Why in Arabic? And then even the Al-Ustad, the Mushrif, Dr. Yusuf Madrazi, why not in English? Your name, and also your name in Arabic, الرحمن, اسماعيلي, السنة الجامعية, instead of academic year. I don't know why English, Arabic in an English context. Then a dissertation submitted in partial fulfillment of the requirement for the Doctorate National. Now it's Doctorate. Right? This is in 2010, a promulgated law substituted Doctorate National with just Doctorate. In 2010, I'm quite sure. It's just Doctorate, yeah, Doctorate. So please, Makinas Doctorate National. Now, the title of your dissertation, Cross-Cultural Pragmatic Politeness, Production and Perception of Apology Strategies in Moroccan Arabic. As you know, the title should clearly delineate what we call, should be very specific. This is, I would qualify it as a general title. You could have narrowed down narrow down the title to become, for instance, to show variables that you have studied. Maybe cross-cultural pragmatic correctness, production and perception among university students, because they should variables like this among Moroccan university students should appear in the title rather than just Moroccan Arabic. And then Moroccan Arabic is so broad. Maybe you mean Moroccan culture, but not Moroccan Arabic. That's something you could have considered, say, الرحمن. Now there are some, I don't know where some expressions. Let's move to, please, acknowledgement. It's always, most of the time, it's in the plural. Acknowledgements, not just one. Unless it's just one acknowledgement, but here you acknowledge so many. You have acknowledged the work of so many people, and that's so acknowledgements in the plural rather than then say muqtadar and abstract in Arabic. This is redundant. You don't need to muqtadar. It's muqtadar because you put abstract in English. So why muqtadar and then in Arabic abstract? لأن تبحث هذه الدراسة في قضية التأدب الكلامي في اللغة العربية. John, what Professor Isawi said, maybe you could have used اللسان الدارج والدارجة or something ولا العامية المغربية rather than العربية المغربية. العربية المغربية, as you know, in sociolinguistics, for a language to become, a dialect to become a language should be quite codified and standardized. Codified and standardized. This is a whole process they go through to become. So Moroccan Arabic is a dialect, so a variety of language rather. It's a variety of language. So it's used, as you know, I think that اللسان الدارج is better. Then البحث البراغماتي. البراغماتي is maybe there is a word, there is an equivalent, which is التداول. التداول اسمه ماشي البراغماتي. تسمع البراغماتي بحال النفعي بحال there is the term التداولي. It's better if you have used this term as تصورها الاجتماعي وتصوراتها الاجتماعيه البراغماتيه هذه باينه بحال النفعيه ما كاينش هذا الصدر ديالك يتسع السي هذاك مازال Now, again, you should be consistent. Sometimes you use we aim together to. Sometimes you use I. Please, consistency. I or we. Maybe تخلط ما بين we and I. Please. Now, a significant. There are some grammatical errors. We should pay attention to. A significant number of studies. Number of studies has been rather than have been. Appendices or appendixes, you should put numbers for the appendices. The appendix again, it's in Arabic. It could have been better if you translated the questionnaire into English. The questionnaires are two questionnaires, the three questionnaires. Okay, the three questionnaires are in Arabic. It's better. You could have translated them into English. Again, the Convention for Transliteration, Convention for Transliteration Arabic sounds into for transliterating Arabic. This is a mistake. Some words need to be capitalized. Page 1. A word difference: social sciences, linguistics, anthropology, social psychology, sociology. Capitalized. Now I join what Professor Isawi has said. To the knowledge of the researcher, the current study is believed to. Now, either you believe or it's a knowledge. Do you know or you believe? To your knowledge, then you believe that, okay? To be the first that examines to, I'm not going to charge you of being somehow pompous, say that to the knowledge of the researcher, but I think that this is something you could have, you should consider. Now, as the الرحمن, what sociolinguistics and values are involved in Moroccan Arabic and culture. You could have considered some paralinguistic features, like, for instance, silent strategies as a ways of apology. Maybe silence, other variables, okay? Silent strategies as a ways of apology. Then page 5, please, page 5, followed by a meta-pragmatic judgment task that elicits both quantitative and qualitative data. We elicit views and opinions, and we collect and analyze them. We don't elicit quantitative. We elicit views and opinions, and we analyze data. Page 9, page 9, paragraph 3. The aim of this section is to critically investigate their claims in relation, which claim? There is dangling here. Their claims in relation to politeness and cross-culture. That refers to which anaphoric reference it goes to. Now, this is dangling. The list of references, all the sources, all the resources or the references are print sources. No electronic sources whatsoever. But is that electronic source? In a digital age. This is something I really find bizarre. A bibliography will be much appreciated and useful. And again, it could also have updated your references, because most of your references are old-fashioned, outdated, because the most updated one is 2017, I think. Yeah, 17. Okay? So you could have used some sources, print sources. Okay? You can touch the print sources. Okay? Now, if you go to appendix, you know, see, Rahman, that all questions, all your questions are closed-ended questions. All closed-ended questions are embarrassing, are challenging for respondents. It's very challenging and embarrassing for them. Now, open-ended questions would have elicited attitudes better than closed-ended questions. Now, my question is, what is the relevance for the use of putting age and gender as variables without analyzing or showing their relevance, for instance? Now, you put, as Professor Kamal said, just two variables, sin and urgency. Other variables could have yielded a significant result, like social status. So many other variables would have done the work perfectly well. And again, if you go to the questionnaire, عزيزي المشارك، شكرا جزيلا لتعاونك في إنجاز هذا البحث. Okay? Without mentioning the rationale of the research. For instance, you could have informed the informant or the respondents that, for instance, المعلومات التي ستدلي بها ستبقى سرية وستعمل مثلا لغرض البحث. This is ethical. This is the most ethical thing that you have to show to your respondents where are you going to use the. Now the translation of the it's not a translation, but the word, the Arabic of the questionnaire. Sorry to say it, it's awkward. يجب الاعتبار بشدة أعتبره خطأ بسيط جدا. We say الخطأ البسيط ولا كبير جدا. Maybe الخطأ is كبير, it's just it. خطأ instead of, and then sometimes you put four let's say scales. You have sometimes 5 قريبا جدا 1 2 3 4 5 but for الخطأ is just for 3 كبير بسيط جدا بسيط كبير كبير جدا. This is, you are inconsistent in this in your scale because you have to be consistent. It's either 5 grades or 3. Okay. Now, again, just this is I'm voicing out my views. Is it cross-cultural pragmatics or inter-cultural pragmatics? Now, to join again what Professor Isawi has said, you could have used some studies, I don't know, in politeness by some Moroccan scholars, for instance. In this case, or in this point, I would refer to the role of a very interesting, let's say, article by Professor Abdelaziz Bouchard, the role of religion in shaping politeness in Moroccan Arabic. The case of the speech fact of writing and its place in intercultural understanding and misunderstanding. Abdelaziz Bouchra, 2015. Here, the variable of religion is very important. You could have added this variable to your, not just age, but also religion. Why not? Religion. Now, verbs used, most of the verbs used, most of them, in a stated, a repetitive state to state, and they stated, they state. You could have used other verbs, they are called academic verbs, academic English. Like, well, there are thousands, like study, to investigate, to research, to examine, to analyze, to explore, to demonstrate, to inquire, to stress, to affirm, to observe. Stated, repetition, stated, and of course, there are verbs which are stronger, verbs to report. Some verbs, they are very strong to report what a author did, said, or also to report his or her opinion, and divorce his or her. Verbs like to assert, to argue, to reject, to advocate. Okay? Now, I would have liked to see a more thorough discussion of how the findings relate to the general discussion of the problems of the literature. Because what is a literature review? It's not an account. In a most successful literature review is the one that pinpoints at the gaps in the literature. What are the gaps? You need to identify the gap and bridge them. What you did is just an account of what has been said. It's not just an account of what has been said. And where lies the gap, or where lie the gaps, and you bridge them. This is a good. Now, where can you find the gap in a literature review? A gap of a literature view can be found in 4 main axes, which are either a pure knowledge deficit, a gap in knowledge, or a gap in shortcomings in scholarship, or a gap, which means in research, or a gap in a controversy, or a gap in unproven assumptions. This is where you can find the gap. Now, what you did as Rahman is just accounting the literature, but not criticizing or discussing the literature. This is a weak point, believe me. Now again, you talk about quantitative, qualitative data. That's good, but when it comes to quantitative data, quantitative method, or you said mixed method, you need to test some hypotheses. No hypothesis is tested here. Not in Israel hypothesis, right? You should test hypotheses, questions, and then your hypothesis. Why a hypothesis is very important? Because it helps researchers, it helps you organize the information you are studying. And also hypothesis has to be testable. And a hypothesis which is not testable is not a hypothesis. It has to be testable, and it tests what? It tests the outcome and tries to prove it. This is very important. A hypothesis tests the outcome. Since you are talking, let's say, dealing with the quantitative research, hypothesis testing is very interesting and is mandatory sometimes to test the hypothesis. Now, you said that you used the SPSS. Now, SPSS is used to look for statistical significance. Most of the statistical significance, statistics are just descriptive statistics. What about inferential statistics? You talk about just descriptive, you describe. What about other significant, I would say, statistical significance? Now, like frequencies, percentages, main score. Main score, they are there. Okay, I agree. We find main score. What about frequencies? This is something you totally miss. And again, when it comes to references, very few references related to methods and methodology. Methods and methodology references. I barely find, found 3 or 4. And in a dissertation like this, a 304-page dissertation, you could have, I would say, consulting other references related to methodology. So I think that my major objection to the study, to your study, is that it lacks a more general theoretical framework. Right? Of course, the conceptual framework, the concepts are there, but the theoretical framework is lacking. So in spite of your discussion of the relevant literature, you talk about Legar and all those people working in the pragmatics, that's very relevant. But I find that the discussion or the theoretical framework is missing. You should have sought for the gaps, as I said before. You should have sought for the gaps in the literature and try to bridge them. By exploiting more energetically the literature, also in the empirical analysis, the work would have got a less descriptive stance. This is a more descriptive work rather than a work of analytical vigor. It's not, there is no in-depth analysis. I can feel that there is no in-depth analysis in your description. Yes, there is description, but no analytical, let's say, analysis. No analytical, as I said, vigor. Now, my critical comments do not detract from my positive evaluation of the book. This is, I'm doing my job. This is a good piece of work, an excellent piece of work. You find that energy, time, and energy have been invested here. This is an excellent presentation, an excellent, let's say, dissertation. The conclusion of the thesis, my conclusion here, that your thesis submitted by علوي, Mr. علوي اسماعيلي الرحمن, responds to the requirements of the doctoral degree, and thus I do agree that a doctoral degree can be conferred on you. Now, this is some of the remarks again I put that I hope that you take them into account, and I wish you every success in your future, let's say, academic endeavor. And thank you, Professor Muslim.
Thank you, Professor Muslim, for your and remarks. First, and for your scrutinizing examination of the thesis. Now my turn. I am the last but not the least. And to be honest with you, Mr. Malawi, I totally agree with all what my colleagues have just said concerning your paper. I don't know, because Mr. Isawi said that it is specialized in translators, so you got the evaluation of the translator, the linguistic translator. You don't know the specialty of the linguistics and clarification. And now you are going to listen to the evaluation of the pragmatics. So, Mr. Alawi, when I got the thesis, I was really very excited and enthusiastic to read it, to evaluate it, to report on it, because it is now works on pragmatics are getting very scarce these days, and also in linguistics in general. But when it comes to pragmatics, it is becoming even more scarce, as I said. So I was, as I said, very enthusiastic to read it. And so when I looked at the title, cross-cultural pragmatic politeness, so I said, well, I'm going to read something about politeness, and this is something really very positive. At least it shows that there are some people who are still interested in pragmatics. But to be honest with you, your work leaves much to be desired. Okay, so, because really I didn't find what I was really looking for and what I was expecting, especially that, as my colleagues have just said, we are living now in the digital world, and so you have a lot of information at your hand, if you want, and at your disposal, so you can easily find out new and recent books and recent research done on pragmatics and on politeness in general. But I don't know for what reason, but you ignored all the recent works that have just been done, and you limited yourself to I wouldn't say old, but actually remote, I would say remote references and works that were done years ago. And of course, that when I read the thesis on 2022, I was expecting to find something modern, to find something new, because I did my research in 2006, so I was expecting that I'm going to discover something. But really, I just don't want to undermine the work that you did. I just don't want to touch the quality of the work that you did, but simply that it didn't live up to my expectations as a pragmatist evaluating work on politeness. What is sure, in fact, and I know here to your abstract, you are not the first one to work on pragmatics. You are not the first one to work on politeness in a Moroccan context, as you are claiming here in your abstract. And especially you said that very, very few studies were done and have been conducted on in this field of pragmatics in the Moroccan context, which is not true. Actually, if you have works. You have consulted the libraries, etc. You will find that we have already, especially in the 1980s, 1990s, etc. There were so many works done, and that you could have actually relied on to resume actually work from there, from where they stopped. Now, what you did is that it is as if you have started from scratch. But generally, what is the use of your thesis and other theses that were written before is that we start from where they stopped and we continue and we try to find to go further than that and to try to find something perhaps different and perhaps new that will enlighten actually more the field of the works on pragmatics. Okay. Here we once again, you say that it is one of the pioneering works where it's a good thing just to have some such self-confidence and say, well, I'm going to do something unique and I'm going to do something extraordinary. But if this is not true, it rather gives produces the opposite effect. Okay, so me as a reader, I was really not. Shocked when I read this one, said, which is not the first work done pragmatics, and this is not the original thing that he's talking about. All right, especially in the working context. All right. So you worked on apologies and in work in Arabic, and you wrote so many concepts, so many ideas, so many things that you. To such an extent that when I looked at the table of content, I said that this is a compilation of information. Okay? Not less, not more than that. Okay? Because actually, well, so many titles. Have you looked at the contents? Okay? So many titles, so many numbers, pages, etc. So that's when I got confused. Okay, where is the section? Where is the subsection? Where is the main chapter, etc. So first of all, just the visual presentation. Okay, the visual presentation for sections, subsections, and chapters is not very clear actually. So apart from, so I had to look very carefully because generally what happens is that when I open content, when I look at the content, I must have a visual clear presentation of what I'm going to see, okay, of what I'm going to read. So I can see the chapter, I can see the main section, I can see the subsection, and this is done through organization and through indentation. I don't see this in your table of content, sorry. So that I have to look very carefully. Where is the 211? Where is the 2121 down, etc. So I relied on this to know where is the section and where is the subsection. And this is really very frustrating for the examiner and for the reader, apart from the part that it is really confusing. So this is, so that's why I said that you have included anything you have read about pragmatics. We have to be very selective when we want to do a review of literature. I will do the review of only the things that I am going to use in my analysis later on, and which is immediately relevant to what I'm going to, or what I have the intention to focus on and to investigate in my practical part. Not everything here that has been mentioned in your practical part has been used or seems to me relevant for your practical analysis of the data integrated on the quality. Okay, so why should I put all this information? It is as if you have read something, you used it, you liked it, or you think that it is pragmatic. So I'm going to put it in my content, in my table of content, which is in fact not the right way to go about. Okay, so I review and I use all of the things. And once again, where is your theoretical framework? Okay, speak about speech art, right? About Weiss cooperative principle, about Nietzsche's principle, politeness principle, about whatever Austin's taxonomy, but what? Where is exactly the right framework that I'm going to use for? You speak about the limitations of the traditional approach to
to pragmatics and to traditional approaches to politeness, etc. And you brought out some other views, but later on you went back to work within the framework of Searle's and Roman Davidson's actually theoretical framework. So I really got confused. This is one thing. Another thing is that what is the difference? Can you tell me the difference between chapter 1 and chapter 2? Both of them seem to me are theoretical not framework, but theoretical or review of literature or review of the concepts that you found in the books and articles that you consulted and you used, right? So for me, I think that chapter 1 and chapter 2 should be used, and you should delete all that is not relevant. Okay, so I'm not really interested in reading everything about pragmatics in your thesis, but I'm interested in reading only things that you are going to explore later on when you go to do practical analysis of your theory. Now, within the chapter 2, I see some sections, okay? Interlanguage pragmatics, cross-cultural pragmatics, and intercultural pragmatics, okay? So where are you in all of these? And what is the difference between all of these, okay? And you do not do any justice when it comes to reviewing all of these concepts and reviewing all of these views, etc. Just this is depicted through pagination, okay? So 60, it is one thing. 62, another title. 64, another title. 66, another title. Which means that in every page I have a title. You just scratch the surface of the issue that you raise in this title, and then you move to another thing. But what is expected in a doctoral thesis is that some profound analysis, some profound argumentation, and some profound presentation of facts and ideas, etc. And I do not feel that there is someone called علوي or الرحمن in what I read. Okay, you just give us facts. Where are you? You are a researcher, so I need to find you in your work. Okay, I can't find the light bulb. I cannot serve when I need this, and I can go and look for their own work. But you, as the writer, as an author of a thesis, as a researcher, you must be visible in the work that you present, visible through argumentation, through criticism of what other people have said and have presented. Okay, so this is something which seems to be lacking in your work. So that I will say that it is you are writing in an impersonal style, which means that you are totally absent. And I'm sorry to have to say this, okay, because as a linguist, you must have this sense of investigating things, of exploring things, and of commenting on things, okay? And arguing, and you do not have to accept things as the way they are presented. When it comes to the organization of your thesis, there are lots of things to say. Some of these things have already been mentioned by my colleagues, but I would say that your general introduction and general conclusion once again do not reflect, actually, do not do justice to the whole thesis, because generally I was expecting to find more details, more arguments, more explanations in your general introduction, and the same thing in your general conclusion. But these are very modestly presented, very modestly written, to such an extent that when I read it, I finished reading the introduction to conclusion, still things, not the conclusion, but the introduction, things were still confusing to me, and things were not yet clear about what you are going to do and what you are going to do to investigate. When I go to generally, we have some research questions, okay? when I went to look at your research questions, I was expecting to find actually once again some original, because as you said in your abstract, this is something new. So I was expecting to find some research questions which do not fall into the basis, but here in fact what I find is that what are the strategies used to issue the apologies? Okay, so this is very simple. How do native speakers apologize in Moroccan Arabic, right? To admit offense, and the very modest, once again, research question is what sociocultural norms, that are very basic things actually that have already been dealt with, and so that you could have thought about some more interesting, more appealing research questions, because what is the role of an introduction? In fact, the role of an introduction is to stimulate the interest of the reader. Okay, so if I'm not stimulated in your introduction, so I wouldn't care about reading what is coming after that. Okay, so that's why this is something that you have to pay attention to. And it's in fact, as I said, you are a teacher, and I'm sure that when it comes to teaching composition and writing to your students, you have to tell them that you have to pay clear attention to the introduction that you write, because this is the first impression that the reader gets from your work, and the conclusion is the last impression that he gets from you. So that this must be so a lot of attention must be given to this introduction and conclusion, as I said, because these are the first impression and the last impression, and it is on the basis of these impressions that we make our judgment and that we make our evaluation of the works done. Okay, I am still commenting on your organization, and I was really astonished to find that there are some paragraphs which are very long, and there are some others which are so short to such an extent that I have one paragraph constituted of one single sentence, okay, which is non-conventional and unacceptable in work. You cannot possibly have one paragraph which is constituted, as I said, or made up of only one sentence. Okay, I overlooked certain things that have already been mentioned by my colleagues, and with which I totally agree, as I said at the very beginning of this. But when it comes to the information that you should have included in your thesis to talk about politeness, so there are some basic things that about it that you didn't think. That the difference between illocutionary force, the perlocutionary force, okay? And because an apology, when I issue an apology, especially when you are not talking only about production, you are talking about perception, okay? So the perception things that are related with perception have to do with what is perlocutionary, not illocutionary, but you overlook all of this, okay? Because if you have included the perlocutionary effect of your apology, and the strategies that are used for apologizing, it have been very, very interesting for the reader and for the examiner as well. One thing that you overlook as well is the notion of faith. Where is the notion of faith? Because you relied on Searle's, actually Searle's theory of speech act theory. We talk about speech act theory, we're not talking about face and the face written acts. Okay, so here face written act, when it is a request, you are talking about the producer of the act and the speech act. But when it comes to apology, it is a face written act for the receiver, because the receiver has been offended, and so you have to formulate your act in such a way as to amend this offense. Okay, so it is totally absent, which is a pity, because face here is a major issue that should be raised in any work done on pragmatics. And when you were in your presentation, you said that people rely and that your informants rely on strategies to reduce the illocutionary force of their acts, which is totally false. We do not reduce the illocutionary force of an act, because here I think that you are confused and you are making a mistake in confusing between the force, which is to say, I don't understand, the physical force perhaps, or something like that, and the force of an act is what it is used for. So you say that this action has got the illusionary force of a request, it has got the illusionary force of an apology, it has got the illusionary force of an invitation. We cannot reduce it. So if it is a request, it is a request. But what we can reduce once again is the perlocutionary act or the perlocutionary force of an act. Okay, that is to say the effect. This is what we can reduce through the use of strategies, okay, but not the illocutionary force, because we cannot change the illocutionary force of an act. So I think that there is a sort of confusion here, and you have to do something about it in your discussion of the result, as you say. When I go to your methodology, once again, I totally agree with my colleagues, because I think that you have used some mixed approach, but what I can see here that once again you have the discourse completion task, we have the scale response tasks, etc. But I think that in a pragmatic research, you have to rely more on interviewing and on observation, okay? Because generally when I do a questionnaire, especially when it comes to exploring something in pragmatics, when I do a questionnaire, what I do is that I make my respondents conscious of what I am looking for. Generally what happens is that when we use language, we are using it spontaneously and unconsciously, because there are things that we have developed throughout years to use different acts, strategies, etc. Now, when I tell you this is a situation, I create a situation for you, and I tell you, please think about it. Act as if you are in this situation, but they are not in that situation. Okay. You are rendering them conscious, and when they are conscious, they are not spontaneously responding to your questionnaire. Okay, which means I think about it. But what happens is that when I act spontaneously, I don't think much about what I'm doing, because this is something that has become mechanical with experience, with years, and etc. Okay, so I would say that. Mr. Asa, we have suggested that you could have used interview. I suggest that you could have used observation, actually. Though even with the observation, we have what we call the observer's paradox, because we try to see in what I'm observing, what I really want to find. But there are ways actually of overcoming this. Actually to get some representative and some accurate results. Okay? I don't know the number of informants that relied on, but I don't remember it. But when I was reading, I was asking myself, how much representative is this? Okay, is this number? I'm sorry. How much representative is the number of informants that you rely on? And you know that representativeness in linguistic analysis is very important, possibly. This it is not detailed, but it is a very important detail to which you have to give real importance. So, now, at some junctures of your thesis, you say, I am going to investigate apologies in the Moroccan Arabic. Okay, why this is the Moroccan Arabic? Okay, so and you used it many times. So that I said, well, in Moroccan Arabic, why should you use this the Moroccan Arabic? Because if you say the Moroccan Arabic, it means that I we have only more Arabic, not many more. Well, we have varieties, but not only the more. Well, I have once again to say that you use in the title, you use cross-cultural pragmatic politeness. Okay. Throughout your thesis, you are speaking about cross-cultural linguistic politeness. Okay. What do you mean by linguistic politeness? It is, we have politeness and you overlook what is cultural. Okay, because generally when I go for any, especially that you adopted from and of politeness, so they give extreme importance to cultural values, to the cultural aspect of pragmatic communication and pragmatic analysis, etc. But you overlook once again this notion of culture, and you stick to what is linguistic politeness. I don't really understand what you mean by linguistic politeness. Is it when you say linguistic politeness, you want us to see or to understand that you are not going to look at what is cultural or social cultural or whatever? Okay, but throughout your thesis, you are from time to time, you just mention something which is culture, you just mention something which is, well, I really advise that you go through it again and that you need some order in the organization, in the presentation of ideas. Now, when I go to your appendix, quickly, you have استمارة الطالب, yeah? استمارة الطالب, and you have actually talked about different, so you have created different situations and you wanted them to put themselves in different situations. But when I go to الموقف الخامس, أنت أستاذ. So you've taken him from being a student to being a teacher. Why is this actually? So here we are. Right? Why have you thought of including this situation? Okay, and أستاذ, where you create your dad at بكلية. Okay. أنت أستاذ في الكلية. You are writing about في الكلية. بالتيم مع واحد طبيب, etc. Okay, so please can you justify and explain to me what is this? Okay, and now we go to a موقف الثامن والموقف العاشر. Actually, these are not situations of apologies, but they are situations of defense. If you find yourself in this situation, you will have to defend yourself. You will have to justify actually what you have done, but not merely to apologize, because these are the criminal deeds. You take the suitcase of someone, or you take, I don't know what they did. So these are, or you went out of the supermarket without paying for the things that you purchased. This is such a delinquence, and so you have to not to apologize only, but you have to do something about it. So these are extremely serious situations that only where we don't have. So as I said, when you have, that's why these hypothetical situations and these things that you have just thought about may not be considered as really adequate situations for your investigation, because you have just imagined things. But if you had relied on observation, on real observation of real situations happening in front of you, the results will have been much more revealing to me and much more significant than the one that you have thought of and that you have created for your informants. Okay. So once again, I have the notion of phase, and I saw also that there are no e-books, no websites consulted, and which is actually very it degrades the quality of the work that you presented. And as Mr. Laser said, I have a lot of things on gender. Gender, bisexuality, gender, etc. Right. Gender and language in Morocco. If you are not going to investigate something related on the basis of variable of gender, why should we include all of this on on gender, etc. Which means that once again, you have to be very selective in our bibliography. We read things that are relevant, we read, and we put here things that we have really consulted and things that to which we referred while doing our analysis. Well, once again, there is it is clear that a lot of efforts have been deployed in the accumulation of information here, in putting presenting your data and analyzing your data. But if as we are not really criticizing you, we are just actually drawing your attention to some of the pitfalls that if you really are given the opportunity to review this thesis and to the final version, you could actually rely on this and go back to these observations to make the text more accurate, perhaps, presentation and more accurate text. Okay. I don't have much to say about your English. It is acceptable and satisfactory to a certain extent. Though, as my colleague has just said, we have this problem, some problems of punctuation, some problems of capitalization, and some problems of collocation. So I am concerned with, not I am concerned of or whatever. Okay, but so these are a few things that we have once again to edit and to pay attention to. At the end, I would say that I congratulate you for the efforts that you put into it, for the work that you did on pragmatics, and I hope that you will go on working on pragmatics in your future research endeavors. Okay, because we need actually such studies, and as I said to you, I was really happy to be involved by my colleague for this useful project in this defense, because I liked reading something about pragmatics, and he knows my love for pragmatics. So thank you, Mr. Rahman, for involving me. It's a pleasure to be here, to be with my other colleagues here. It's a good opportunity. So I give you the floor, Mr. علوي, if you have any comments, and if you want to answer any one of our questions, right? And just please try to be brief.
Thank you, professors. Thank you for your preemptive questions. Yes, once again, I would like to express my profound gratitude to my supervisor, Professor Yusuf Abdelaziz, and to my dissertation examiners, Professor Elina Musbiha, Professor Kamal Israeli, and Professor Khalid Husseini for your constructive and thoughtful comments and questions and discussion on my research. I have really benefited by my wider section and discussion. The review process is a really precious chance for me to think about the various aspects of my work from a range of perspectives, pragmaticism, as the professor mentioned. I also very much appreciate your comments and suggestions I received in my dissertation, and I assure you that I will take consideration before I submit the final version of my work, so that I can this consideration really will improve the quality of my work. And thank you very much.
Does anybody want to add something on the panel? No?
What's this? No, I want to say something.
Yeah.
I was when this took a lot, like 2 hours now, and 2 hours, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's interesting. I think it's a thesis that will stay with us, because with a lot of comments and critiques, and it's the biggest challenge I've been thinking about. I was expecting you to react like to say, to justify, but you chose the clever way to be polite. It's interesting how I joined. I think it's a very big challenge to be polite today, and I think that I take the floor to say this because you can see the panel, different ages, different maybe different schools, different arts, different backgrounds. But I think it's a very wonderful work by the choice of on politeness. Where we work, we have a lot of friction. I read all the definitions of politeness you put there, which means to reduce friction, to maybe to ensure that conversational contract and all those things, which means you have a lot of treasure in a thesis. But the biggest problem, how you can sell them, how you can make them really nice. You have a second chance, and something maybe in the future. It's interesting to know how much time, like how many years did you spend writing this? Because when we read it, we don't know. We have to get an idea about how much time was invested. Was it 3 years? Was it 4 years? Was it 5? Was it 7? Was it 8? Because sometimes 8 years of research is interesting. That's why we should have a CV along with it, and maybe the steps, maybe the limitations. So my comment is that you managed to prove politeness by writing on it and by doing it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the jury. So now I ask your audience actually to retreat so that we can have time to debate later on.
يا سيدي الله يوفق. يلا
نسأل الله التوفيق.
صافي هادشي اللي كتبت راه كيتابعوك مباشر الآن.
الآن تختلف اللجنة للتداول ومنح درجة ربما بعد دقيقتين 3 دقائق 5 دقائق اللجنة تختلف إن شاء الله. طبالي اللي داير
عرفتوا واش دايرين هنا؟ هنا ما دايرين شي بلاصه اخرى سربي راه دار حمزه باش نعرف كيف داير
مختبر شرطة
تعرفوا
سنين درتي دكتوراه 3 سنين 4 سنين سنة كريمة غير الدكتوراه ديال العربية المغربية ولا كذا هذاك الشيء كان كاين لا اللي كنقولوا اللهجة كنهضروا على صوت مختلف ديال أما مصطلح اللهجة هو مصطلح اجتماعي ماشي مصطلح لساني ولكن طبيعي مثلا هما راه متفاهمين هذاك الشيء اللي كاين صعيب باش دير كارت شباب.
Amazigh language the Amazigh كذا aspect not included. أيوة فين هو الجانب الأمازيغي؟ أقول لك عاود الثاني مشي دير الاستمارة عند فين؟
إجراءات عادية، راه كيكونوا 5 ديال لي بي في، كل بي في فيه 3 ديال الأوراق باش تحط فيها عمر وسميتو. ياك اسمع، فيها عمر وسميتو وفيها عمر وسميتو وكيسند كل واحد كيبدا يسلك باش كيقول لك خصك دير محددات برك. إلا درنا غير جوج محددات شوف كنقول لك، إلا درنا المحدد ما ناخذ عندي. تبازات. واخا. ضروري نسمع إن شاء الله ضروري. نعود الآن إلى البث المباشر وإلى اللجنة لأنها ستقوم بإعطاء الدرجة النهائية للطالب الباحث.
اسماعيلي على مولاي الرحمن يوم الخميس 27 نوفمبر 2022 موافقة 23 ربيع الثاني 1840 في موضوع cross cultural pragmatic awareness production and perception of anthropology strategies in market تحت إشراف الدكتور منصوص عليها في نقطة 11 من دفتر الضوابط البيداغوجية لسيف الدكتوراه كما ورد في القرار الميزاني ل 1997 صادر في 29 سبتمبر 2008 تمت مناقشة أطروحة من الساعة الثالثة زوالا إلى الساعة 5:30 يومه الخميس 20 نوفمبر 2022 في قاعة المحاضرات بمكتبة الكلية من طرف اللجنة المكونة من السادة الأساتذة دكتورة أديب مصبحة رئيسة، كمال الإسامي وخالد حسيني عضوين، والأستاذ يوسف بن عبد الرزاق مشرفا، والتي اجتمعت برئاسة السيد العميد وأعضاء المجاورة قررت منح الباحث اسماعيلي علوي عبد الرحمن شهادة الدكتوراه في الآداب والعلوم الإنسانية بمركز دراسات في الدكتوراه الآداب والعلوم الإنسانية والفنون وعلوم التربية وتكوين الدكتوراه اللغة الآداب والتواصل والإعلام محور الدراسات الإنجليزية بميزة مشرف جدا في تخصص الدراسات الإنجليزية.
سايس.